Hello there, and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation, grown plants without soil. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, and today we're talking about an area that is almost never talked about in hydroponics and very rarely talked about in horticulture, especially in Europe and in America, really, and that is seed coating or seed dressing, and especially in hydroponic crops. This is something that's rarely undertaken, but actually there's potential, there's massive potential there, both for improving cultivation and also commercially. So there's opportunities for people to start businesses around this, I think, in hydroponics. It could be a real big growth area, but at the moment it's very neglected. It's a blue ocean, as they say in business schools. There's not many people doing this. In arable crops, it's really standard. And if you've got a biostimulant or a pesticide or a fertilizer, it's very difficult to get your product dressed or coated onto a seed because there's so many other products competing for the seed dressing in arable field-based crops because it's so important. And the reason why seed dressings are so important in arable crops, broadacre agriculture, is because it's very uneconomical to apply chemicals to hectares and hectares and hectares. It's easy just to get it on the seed or the tuber, the propagation material as it goes into the ground. And so if it can last for a long time or even just a few days or a few weeks, then that's beneficial. Whereas in horticulture, we tend to just douse everything, foliar sprays or root drenches. But there's real potential for seed coatings. And I think both scientifically and also to make seeds look much better. So whether it's about protecting your seeds, delivering nutrients, or priming your plants for future attack, seed coatings are a potentially massively powerful tool in modern horticulture. And so it's not just for field scale growing. There's plenty for greenhouse growers, microgreens even, and also grow tent growers. So what is a seed coating? At its core, seed coating is the process of applying a layer or a series of layers or materials to the surface of the seed. Now, I'm no expert in this, but I've got a few YouTube videos about it, and people come to me and ask me questions about seed coatings quite often. So I must be like one of the Google or YouTube must think that I am an expert when it comes to seed coatings because I get asked to coat seeds quite often. And I don't like doing it because I'm not an expert, if anyone is an expert. And I always worry because the big danger is applying a liquid and then the seeds germinating too quickly and then losing viability. But you can do it, and you can do it in a way that doesn't result in that. And what might you coat a seed with? Well, you could colour it with just a pigment. You could coat it with just a pigment to make it colourful. You could put a layer of protective clay around it, or even plastic, but I wouldn't advise that because that's obviously microplastics going into the environment. You could put a cocktail of nutrients, fungicides, and hormones onto the seed, or you could form a complete pellet that gives a tiny seed a manageable shape. And that is very popular. We'll talk about that. So what are the goals? Better germination, targeted delivery of treatments, pest resistance, and ease of handling. So what can we add? We can add fungicides and insecticides to protect the seed from soil-borne threats particularly. So you might have a number of fungicides, even a nematicide, something like this. Fertilizer nutrients, particularly phosphorus, zinc, and manganese, are very popular as seed dressings. You might include beneficial microbes, rhizobacteria. You might put on free-living fungi like trichoderma. Mycorrhiza fungi are very popular, and for this you need the spore forms. So there's a company called Symbiome. They're from the Czech Republic. Make sure they're from the Czech Republic. Symbiome from the Czech Republic, and they produce mycorrhizal spores. So these are not the type of mycorrhiza you add to the growing media. Those are propagule-based. You want spore-based, and then what we do is we put a chitosan polymer on after that here at Utrema, like a hydrogel polymer to hold the water around the seeds and to hold the spores onto the seeds so they don't just fly off, because the spores are just delivered as a dust. And we use a cement mixer, nothing more fancy than a cement mixer, and we've done millions and millions of carrot seeds using this method, and they all went up to Scotland. All the organic carrot seeds were coated like that, so that was a really good it wasn't a trial, it was actually a professional contract we had. And we've got some more professional contracts coming this way from North America, so that'd be interesting. If you're growing in acid or alkaline soils, you can even put buffering agents in there to control the pH. Obviously, that's not needed in hydroponics, but that's interesting. And we said about putting the pigments on. Obviously, people might be interested in having a fancy colour. There's a lot about colour theory and what people think is premium or naff or energetic based on the colour and things like that. So like purple colours might say premium, green colours you might think, oh, that's natural and things like this. But actually, a lot of the pigments are there to deter birds from eating them, or in maize and smaller seeds, they can actually be so that if you spill the seeds, you know where they are. So if you're a farmer and you've got all these seeds, then you can find where your spillages are, and also to stop people from eating them. Then to differentiate between, say, maize for food production or animal feed and seed that has had fungicide and pesticide applied to it ready for sowing. So the colour can say, beware, don't eat this. And then there can also be priming agents like jasmonic acid, which we're going to talk about now. So Lancaster University, Jason Moore and people like that up there in Lancaster University about a decade ago looked at applying jasmonic acid to seeds to sort of prime them for defense responses. So you could, this is like it's a bit like salicylic acid. It induces plant immune defenses, induces systemic resistance, so increases resistance to caterpillars, aphids, red spider mites, and works across a number of crops like tomato, sweet corn, even sweet potato apparently. And so requires no ongoing spraying or external treatment. So you can almost like immunize your plants against pest and disease by applying jasmonic acid. The downside of that is that jasmonic acid is really expensive. Then we talked about pelleting. You can fully encapsulate a seed to make it with an inert clay, also with a pigment. That's really good for tiny seeds or machine sowing or adding protection for fragile seeds. I bought a lot of seeds from South Korea, and they were, because I wanted to make my own kimchi. There was a couple of issues around that. It involved me having nearly a physical fight with somebody in my village, and I never ended up making my kimchi. But yeah, all the seeds came as pellets, and I thought that was really interesting because if you were growing cabbages and radishes in the UK, your seeds definitely wouldn't come as a round clay pellet. And I think that's a massive area where if you could get hydroponic seeds and you could pellet them and improve their vigor and viability and their health after germination by putting them in a clay pellet with fertilizers and other ingredients, biostimulants, then that's a major win. I think there's a massive area there. If you could partner with one of these seed companies, you could make a killing because it would be unique to them. That would be these special seeds. You could upsell for this particular seeds that are pelleted and protected. I think there's a massive potential win there. Maybe they've looked at it already and they don't want to do it, but I think there's a massive win there. As I said, you could just go for a pigment to mark that it's been pesticide treated to deter birds, or help to know where you've seen where you've sown them. You know, sometimes I'm sowing seeds that are black or brown into cocoa, and I'm like, where have I put one in there? Where's that one gone? So it helps you know where you've sown the seeds that they're colourful as well. So, and then if you've got blends of different seeds, so you're growing microgreens, having different coloured seeds helps you know whether the blend is mixed well. So beware though that not every coloured seed is treated. Some pigments could be natural, and also they could be due to the pesticide itself or the nutrient itself. So like copper would appear blue, wouldn't it? So there's plenty of pros and cons for pelleting and pigmenting and things like this, and easier sowing of fragile seeds, better establishment rates, targeted delivery of nutrients and protection, early stage pest resistance, automation compatibility. So if you have self-filling seeding machines into your plugs and things like this, then consistency of seed would be fantastic. Obviously, there's a cost disadvantage. Coating seeds is significantly more expensive, so you're going to have to make sure that they're well worth it. And the shelf life may vary depending on the coating material. Plenty of experiments and trials would need to be done, and they could potentially delay water uptake if there's a clay coating. So you need to make sure that is not the case. So yeah, the reason I'm interested in seed coating today is because, as I say, at Utrema, we've got a number of interesting products, and some of them can be used as seed coating. So we've done mycorrhizal coating with chitosan, our biofungicide. However, the one that really interests me at the moment is our Slugger product. And we developed Slugger because it's the number one pest in amateur horticulture in the UK. If you go into someone's garden, the number one pest would be slugs or snails. And so we developed a liquid ferric phosphate product that deters slugs. Fantastic. The problem is it's quite expensive. And not only does that deter a lot of gardeners who aren't at the top of their game, it means it's not applicable for applying to large areas of the UK where slugs are a big problem in, like wheat and oilseed rape, or canola, as it's known in North America. And so we can't just spray it on fields to control slugs where slug pellets would normally be used. But what we could do potentially is coat the seeds. And I thought I had this brainwave last Friday. And I thought, we could coat the seeds as a seed coating, and that could protect the delicate seedling in the first few days of its growth. So today I've been spraying wheat and oilseed rape seeds with our Slugger product and then drying them really quickly so that it doesn't induce germination. And then in a couple of days' time, we'll germinate those seeds and see if they germinate after they've been treated with a big dose of Slugger liquid ferric phosphate. And then we'll compare that to uncoated seeds. And then we'll expose them to a few slugs and see if the treated seeds had been given significant protection against being eaten by slugs and snails. And if that works, then fantastic. We can look at developing that into a commercial service or product that people could use. And so that's seed coating. So that's the podcast for today. It's all about seed coating. We haven't talked about priming. Priming is where you sort of give the plants half the conditions they need to germinate, but not all the conditions they need to germinate. And that's very, very difficult to perform, and maybe one for another episode. I wouldn't mess around with priming if you had very precious seeds, unless you really knew what you were doing, because you could, rather than just giving them some of the conditions you need for germination, you could give them all the conditions you need for germination. That's why when I do a seed coating, I make sure when I get them wet, I only get them slightly damp, and then I dry them instantaneously. As well as that, I talked about previously on the podcast that if you're in the UK and you would like a free sample of any of the Utrema products, I'm more than happy to send a free sample if you buy any other product on the Utrema website. So say you're interested in liquid gold, as it's called in the UK, gold leaf in the US, then if you bought a litre of that, then if you also wanted to try humic acid, I'll send you a sample of humic acid as well. That's only for podcast listeners. You can literally have a sample of anything you want off the website when you buy any other product. I don't advertise that to anyone else apart from listeners, because that's a reward to you guys for helping me grow the podcast. And if you're outside of the UK, then the other opportunity at the moment is we're looking for distributors and wholesalers of our products. We have an amazing range of unique products, like the Slugger product, like liquid gold, like our concentrated salicylic acid. These are products that you won't find a product. They're not just unique, because like anyone can make a unique product by slightly tweaking a formulation. No one's got a product that comes even close to having the active ingredients in that we've got at Utrema. So there's real potential there for distribution globally. So I would definitely check out the Utrema website if you're in any way connected to any distribution networks outside of the UK. So that's been Hydroponics Daily for today. As we say, you can use biopolymers to coat them. You can use pellets. You can apply pesticides, fertilizers, biostimulants, or even plant hormones. And if you think this is interesting, you want to talk about it more commercially, if you want to talk about setting up a company to do that, I'm more than happy to help people set up commercial operations. Even if it's just running advice by me, you don't need to give me any shares or anything like that. Until tomorrow, that's been Hydroponics Daily. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.